organized, but Kelly is mean. You're not mean. So.
Oh, Kelly, she gets bossy, doesn't she?
Yeah, oh, we got
Are you trying to look her?
you guys go, oh, yeah. What if we're streaming right now?
That's good. We watched
No, I'm not kidding.
The courtroom, the defendant's present in court with counsel. Anything direct for the state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything direct for the defendant?
No, Your Honor.
You may invite the jury in. Finish with the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Madonna, when we broke for lunch, we were talking about Jose being jealous with you. Did you ever talk to him about it?
I tried to reassure him that I was with him and that was it. So, I mean, I absolutely tried to, let him know that he had nothing to be worried about with me.
And did you go to counseling about that?
Oh, that was one of the issues. The lying was the lying was more of an issue for me. I guess they were all kind of together, but the lying was more because I had that just created so much untrust for me, so.
And give us a update on the time again, like what date and what month are we at where you're having these kind of trust issues with Jose?
So basically the whole time we were on the Queensland Road address. So, but around September is when Rachel started Shaw University. And so that's about that time, September 2010.
Okay. And in September of 2010, you say you're still at Queensland Road?
Yep, we were at Queensland Road until June of 2012. Okay. So we would be there another year and a half.
And while you're still at the Queensland Road address, once Rachel went away to school, how did the house change?
Rachel left, and one of her friends, her best friend Sade, she ended up having dispute with her mother, and so Rachel asked if it was okay if Sade stayed with us since Rachel's bedroom was going to be vacant. So Jose and I discussed that, and we agreed that it would be okay. I asked her to make sure that she got a part-time job. That was one of the rules. You know, she was going to have to live like in my house, like following our rules. So she needed to get a part-time job. I wanted her to learn how to drive, and I wanted her to enroll in Wake Tech. And Jose was on board with that.
And so he was fine with that, and that was okay as long as
He wasn't fine with it. He was more private. So he wasn't really fine with it, but he agreed.
And did any other, I guess, household problems interfere with your guys' relationship?
Basically, him and Michelle was always under the surface. When I would be working, and he would text me and say, Michelle left her dishes in the sink. And I'd be, I would text back and say, why are you telling me about Michelle? Tell Michelle, I can't do anything. I'm at work. So it was little things like that, and that was constant. And to be fair, she would do the same thing. Jose's doing this. And so I was getting put in the middle between them.
And
regularly.
how did that affect your guys' marriage?
That was definitely a strain on our marriage. It was a strain on me. My fibromyalgia was getting worse. I was having a lot more of the muscle pain and stuff.
And you said you were working at this point in time still as well?
Yep, I was working full-time teaching.
And did was Michelle still in the house then when she had her senior year of high school?
This is before, Michelle's a junior at this point, yeah.
Did you ever have the occasion to have to, I guess, how did you help Jose out with his health problems and health issues?
How did I help? Well, he was pretty he took care of most of his own stuff. He made sure that he had his pills and everything done. I just continued to monitor, make sure that he was eating right and going to the gym and things like that. If he had appointments at the VA hospital over in Durham, like when he had a biopsy done on his liver, and when he had his stomach thing done, I would take him for those appointments.
And when Jose would go to his appointments, is his car a stick or automatic? The car that he would typically drive?
For about 3 years, he had a stick shift. He taught me how to drive stick.
And are these issues still going on continuously throughout your period of time living at the Queensland Road address?
Yes, this is ongoing.
Did you guys end up moving from that Queensland Road address?
Yes, he had so yeah.
So you ended up moving.
We did end up moving. We're missing a whole year there, but we ended up moving in 2012. We bought the house on Schoolhouse Street in 2012.
Did anything else happen during that year that that stuck out to you?
Jose came into a settlement from the VA. He got a back benefit that he was surprised about. I don't think he had known that he was even eligible for that, but they changed some law about the heart stuff, and he ended up getting $90-something thousand in one settlement check.
And where did that money go?
We took a family trip to Puerto Rico. That was the first thing we did. We had to take a couple of payday advance loans on the cars when money had gotten tight again, so we paid those loans off. Basically, it just went right back into paying some of the debt and some of the bills, and then it went into his savings.
Did you ever have any control over that money that Jose received?
No.
Did he even know that he was going to receive that money?
No, nobody knew. I mean, he had never told me he was going to get it. He acted very surprised when he got that.
And you said there was some back benefit from something at the VA.
Yeah, they had changed some of the rulings about heart stuff and what's connected to Agent Orange.
And you said you took a trip down to Puerto Rico.
Yep, it was myself, Rachel, Michelle, and Jose.
And you remember when that was?
20, I want to say it was 2011.
And Miss Madonna, we on two. I'm gonna mark some pictures here. Defendants Exhibit 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And Your Honor, if I may approach.
Yes, sir.
Miss Madonna, you could start at the back and then describe what those pictures are one by one.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard about them before she testifies.
Ladies, I'll excuse you to the jury room for just a few moments while you're there. Don't discuss this case among yourselves, neither should you form or express any opinion about this case during this time. That's your excuse to the jury room.
Do you want to see the photo?
Sure, I have no clue what they are.
Your Honor, I don't have any objection to Defendant's Exhibit Number 6, which shows apparently Mr. Perez at their house. I do have an objection to vacation photographs. I don't think they're relevant in any way.
Your Honor, I believe the condition of the relationship between the two would be relevant to show that they, at some point in time, had a happy, loving relationship, that they did take these trips together. And more so, Your Honor, I think, especially for the trip in Puerto Rico, you can see Jose, Mr. Perez, with his arm up, grasping something with his right hand, which has been in much debate this entire time. So all these pictures are relevant. Ms. Madonna can talk about them, and they're showing everything that we've been talking about this entire week and a half.
And these were taken when?
Your Honor, they're taken at various times. I'll ask Ms. Madonna to lay the foundation for them, obviously. But 2012 for the one with the saw, and we show physical activity. I believe it was 2012 as well for Puerto Rico. I believe there are some older pictures from the beginning of their relationship, I think 2009, if I'm correct. And then another photo that shows that there's paint tape up, and Mr. Perez was in the process of painting that house. So we'd still ask for all of them to come in. I think their entire totality of their relationship is relevant, especially if the state is going to say that Ms. Madonna never had any love or affection for Mr. Perez.
Mr. Meade, anything further to state?
No, Your Honor.
Objection's over. We'll bring the jury in. Does she have those?
I put them back up there.
Okay, you have to identify them by number. And
I will.
What they are.
I will, Your Honor. No, no. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Madonna, if you can first pick up what I've handed up to you is defense exhibit number 2. And what is that?
Do you want me to show the jury
I
or
want
just
you
look
to
at it?
describe it first.
Oh, this is a picture of me and Jose from one of the shows that the band had. So this is when we were newly on Queensland Road. So this would be about the end of the summer of 2010.
Okay, and that's you and Jose in that picture?
That's me and Jose in the
And you
picture.
said the end of the summer of 2010?
Right.
Okay. And does that fairly and accurately represent you and Jose at the end of the summer of 2010?
Yes.
And where were you guys at on that night? Do you remember?
I don't remember the name of the restaurant. We were playing, it was one of my band's first shows.
Okay. If you just put that down and then go to number 3. And describe that picture. What do you see there?
This is a picture of Jose in Puerto Rico.
Okay. And when is that picture taken?
This one, I believe, he had gone to one of the conventions in Puerto Rico. I wasn't there, so I think that might have been 2013 or 2012.
And this picture, did he come back and show you these pictures and y'all put them on your computer?
These were from his Facebook.
And you said that was in 2012 or 2013?
It was either 2012 or 2013, yeah.
And you know he was in Puerto Rico for that time?
He was in Puerto Rico. This is Viejo San Juan.
And does that fairly and accurately represent Jose Perez in Puerto Rico at that time?
Yes, it does.
And if you can go on to number 4. And what picture, what is that?
This is Jose sitting on the bed in the bedroom. We had just moved into the new house on Schoolhouse Street, so this would be 2013. And he was taping off the walls for paint.
Okay. So did he paint the house whenever you moved in there?
It was the bedroom.
Okay. And does that, he just painted the bedroom, did he paint any other rooms in the house?
No.
Okay. And does that fairly and accurately represent Jose Perez in your guys' bedroom?
Yes, it does.
And you said that was on Schoolhouse Street when you first moved in there?
Yes.
All right. And if you can go to number 5, what is that?
This is a picture of us when we were in Florida. And this is just a typical picture that, I guess a selfie of me and Jose.
Okay. And do you remember what time that was when you were in Florida?
This would have been 2012.
Okay. And had you guys taken a trip to Florida to visit family, or what were you guys doing down there?
I think this particular time was a trip to Disney that we went down with Isabel and Rachel. We had been to Florida like 3 times, so I'm not quite sure which one this was. It was one of those times.
And does that fairly and accurately represent you and Jose in Florida in 2012?
It does.
And finally, can you go to number 6? And what does that describe that for the jury?
This is a picture of our front yard after the big storm. I think it was Sandy. I was already teaching at Garner High School, so this is 2013. This is Jose standing in the yard with his saw. It looks like he had spent quite a while already cutting branches because I can see the sweat. So he's out working in the yard with his saw.
Okay. And you remember it was at Schoolhouse Street?
Yeah, this was the house at Schoolhouse Street.
And does that fairly and accurately represent Jose cutting down branches on Schoolhouse Street in 2013?
It does.
Your Honor, I ask to admit state's evidence 2 through 6 into evidence. Defense exhibits 2 through 6 into evidence.
Make it loud.
And Your Honor, if I can ask to publish those to the jury, and I'll continue with questioning.
That's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, defendants exhibits 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to be passed among you. You should view them carefully individually and without comment. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. To the pictures, you said that money came in and it went back out immediately, correct?
Pretty quickly.
Was your credit and I guess financial situation in better shape by this point in time in your life with Jose?
No.
Okay. Were you in a better position at this point though to get a loan on a house?
We were getting closer, yeah. It just seemed like every time we take a step forward, something would knock us back down again.
What kind of things would take you back, knocking you backwards?
There were like cash withdrawals that I just really never knew where they were. Stuff was, and it was time when bills were due, and we ended up having to take from one bill to pay the next bill, and so it was just a lot of shuffling. It was like month to month scrambling with doing the bills back and forth, and
But eventually you guys were able to get into the Schoolhouse Street and get a VA loan, correct?
yes, we finally got it all worked out, and we started the process, and it took several months before everything was finally came through. So we were able to move into Schoolhouse Street. Like I said, I think it was June of 2012. Yeah, because Michelle was still, that was her graduation year, and she was still at Wakefield.
And did you have to pay any money on this loan?
No, it was zero down.
Okay. And how much was the purchase price on this home?
The purchase price was $350,000.
And this was the address we've heard about multiple times, 12412 Schoolhouse Street.
Right.
Tell us about life at that house.
It was great. The house was nice. Everybody got to, again, we had the same situation where everybody had their own space. The most exciting thing was that Michelle was getting ready to go to college, so we were anticipating a lot less stress in the house because then she wasn't going to be there, and so that was going to be less stressful for me and Jose.
Okay. And how long was she away at college?
She went to Pembroke from August until the beginning of November.
So she wasn't there long at all?
She was not there long at all. I was teaching at Garner High School at the time, full-time.
Okay. You were teaching full-time at that time?
Yeah, I had gotten my special ed certification during that year, and I started teaching full-time at Garner High School.
And I guess while Michelle was gone, who all was in the home?
While Michelle was gone, it was just me and Jose, Papa, and Isabel, so it was just the four of us.
The four of you and then a bunch of animals that you were fostering?
We had, yes, we had adopted, and we were fostering, so we had 4 cats and 3 dogs.
And just when you talk about that, that was an interest that both you and Jose shared, correct?
Yeah, he was more the dog person, I was more the cat person. But I felt safe having the dogs, that made me feel safe too, having the dogs in the house.
And why did Michelle end up coming back home?
Pembroke is a very kind of isolated area, and Michelle's definitely more cosmopolitan New York kind of girl, she likes more stuff going on all the time. So it was very much, she was very out of place there. She was very uncomfortable there.
I think Pembroke is down in Robeson County, correct?
Yeah, and she was going to be studying education. She got into some leadership program and everything. I was really proud of her. And, she called me down there and she said, Mom, I can't do this anymore. I need to come back. And
how did Jose react to the news that Michelle was going to be coming back home?
He said she couldn't come home.
Why did he say that?
He said, this is my house and she's not coming back.
What was your reaction to that?
My reaction, we had some arguing back and forth, and my reaction eventually was, that's my daughter. I will just leave. I will take my other children and leave because that's my daughter. I'm not going to be here and be told that my child can't live with me.
And did you end up leaving?
No, he ended up saying, okay, it's fine, just bring her home.
And how was the relationship between he and Michelle whenever she came back home?
It was horrible. It was just arguing intense. Now they were arguing actually more verbally with each other, and she had a boyfriend that he didn't like, and she would bring him over the house, and he was not happy about that.
And Jose was just being he was the homeowner. He
Yes.
was, you guys both owned that house, correct?
Right.
And he didn't want Michelle to bring people in that he didn't know and things like that, correct?
That's right.
So it was typical, normal on his part to say, hey, respect my house and do things like that, correct?
Yes.
But him and Michelle could never see eye to eye to work these problems out.
That's right.
Is this around the time that you suspected Jose had started drinking again?
I didn't find the first bottle until December.
December of what?
December 2012. He and I had a big argument, though, right before that.
And how did the conversation go about that bottle of alcohol?
Well, like I said, we had just had a big argument about one of the bills that he had said was paid, and he had said he had paid the car payment, and the car company was calling me on the phone at the same time that he told me he had paid it, and I was telling him right there, they're on the phone saying it wasn't paid, and he said, yeah, Joe, I paid it, and they're telling me on the phone, Miss Madonna, this hasn't been paid. So it was the lying again, and so we had a big argument about that, and about a week later, I found half a bottle of rum in the garage, and I confronted him about it, and he said it was Michelle's. And at that point, I believed him because I knew Michelle was, socially drinking and stuff with her friends. So I did believe that it was hers at that point. But the doubt was in the back of my mind.
Did you go and talk to Michelle about it?
I didn't talk to Michelle about it.
At that point in time, did you actually think he was drinking again or falling off the wagon?
I didn't think he was drinking again, but once that lie happened, that was like a big lie. That was a big, major one for me. So once that happened, I started feeling like we might be in trouble again with the lying.
And when you said the huge lie, you're talking about the lying about the car.
Yeah.
Was that a huge a breaking point in your relationship?
Yeah, that was a breaking point for me because it wasn't about the car and who's going to pay the car. We had the money for the car loan. It was about the fact that he said, I paid it, and he was lying right to my face about it. So at that point, I decided that I needed to start some therapy and give some serious thought to ending the relationship.
And who did you start your therapy through at that point in time?
I had been seeing a woman by the name of Monica Kapp. She was a nurse practitioner in Wake Forest. I had been seeing her for a little while, and then my insurance was no longer paying her. So Isabel was at that Carolina Partners, so I asked them about myself getting into therapy at the same place.
Was there anything? When did Jose's son pass away?
Jose's son passed away in March.
March of 2013.
Yeah, March of 2013.
And did that affect the relationship, or Jose? How did that affect the relationship and Jose?
That whole month, actually from like February until then, was a pretty difficult month for us because Jose had experienced a health issue in February.
Well, I'm asking about a son right now.
Oh.
How did the son's death affect?
Oh, and the
Jose's
son died. It was just devastating. He was traumatized. We all were devastated, but that was his son. He was traumatized.
And you said that Jose Sr., your husband, had a health issue in February, the month before that, correct?
Yes.
Talk to us more about that.
I woke up one Sunday morning and I thought he wasn't breathing. He was passed out. I couldn't, and I was shaking him and I was calling him and I was saying, Jose, 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 and he wasn't responding. I couldn't see his chest rising up and down. And I grabbed the phone and I called 911 and they talked me through doing the whatever I needed to do, CPR, make sure he's breathing and all that. And they stayed with me on the phone and then they sent the ambulance.
Did you perform CPR on Jose?
I did.
And is that the incident that we heard about through Detective Gay when 911 was called out to that home?
Yes.
Had you ever had any other occasions to call have serious concerns about Jose's health?
Yeah, the year before, right when we had moved in, he was doing yard work, and he came running in the house, clutching his chest, saying, "I'm having a heart attack, I'm having a heart attack," and he laid out flat on the ground, and I was crying and called 911, and I'm screaming in the phone, "Jose, don't you die on me!" You know, we'd just gotten finished moving in, and so no, they came out again. So that was, I think, that was probably the third time that I had to do that.
Okay. This is the third time you had to call 911
Yeah.
for him? And were both of them serious or stuff that he could deal with?
No, they were serious. Yeah.
And how long was Jose in the hospital for that incident in February?
I remember having to take off about 4 or 5 days from work.
Okay.
So he was hospitalized for, I believe, around that amount of time.
And did anything else happen around that time that caused you to have to take some days off of work?
He got out of the hospital, and then 2 weeks later he went to Puerto Rico for one of the conventions, the AA convention over there in Puerto Rico. He flew over there right around the beginning of March, I think. I was still teaching at Garner, and Michelle was supposed to come babysit Isabel in the morning so I could go to work, and Michelle didn't show up. And after having lost so many days already, and Isabel having been suspended so many times already in her school, her new school she was in, I decided at that point that I needed to resign because I wasn't being a good teacher because I was taking so much time off, and I wasn't being a good mom because my kids weren't, my daughter wasn't taken care of in the morning.
How did Jose react to you finally or stopping work?
My understanding was that I would be able to sub every day, so I knew we weren't going to be losing a huge amount of money, so he was fine with it.
And how much money per day does a substitute teacher pay in Wake County?
Well, because I'm a certified teacher, I believe at that time it was 90 or 95 a day.
And does substitute work fairly regular?
You can pretty much sub every day, yeah. And there are times when people call out, like, for a certain block of time, like if somebody has something that they have scheduled ahead of time, so you can get good subbing jobs ahead of time, too.
Did you think that Jose started drinking again because of the death of his son?
Yeah, I found a second bottle about the end of March, and it was rum again. It was a different color rum. And this time I knew that it wasn't Michelle's. This time I knew it was his. And I confronted him and I told him, "I'm sober too long for this. I can't do this." And I asked him to pour it out. And I asked him to call his sponsor. And I don't know if he called his sponsor, but I did see him unscrew the cap and start pouring it out. And at that point, I started monitoring more to see if he was drinking. And I knew that I needed to get to an Al-Anon meeting.
Did you ever call his sponsor yourself and say, "Hey, I think Jose is drinking again"?
I didn't call him about the drinking. I had called his sponsor plenty of times before about when there were big lies and stuff happening. I had called and said, "Fred, I need help. I don't know what to do." And so I had called Fred before, but not about the drinking at this point.
Why hadn't you called Fred about the drinking if he's been sober this long?
Well, the thing is that when you have a sponsor, it's your responsibility to do things like that.
But why didn't you take it up and call someone to get your husband help?
No, he was still going to meetings. So I knew, it was his responsibility to make sure he talked about it at meetings.
Is it something where you can go in there and start talking to them about Jose's problems or you thinking he's drinking again at a meeting?
No, that's what Al-Anon's for. If you're having a problem with somebody else's drinking, you go to Al-Anon.
Because obviously anonymity is a huge thing in alcoholics.
Yeah, definitely.
And what did Jose say about your accusation that he had been drinking again?
He said I was crazy, and it was Michelle's.
Did you ask Michelle about it that time?
I'm not sure if Michelle and I discussed it. I felt like I didn't need to. I felt like I knew that it was his.
Why did you feel like you knew it was his?
Coming so close after his, losing his son like that.
Where did you find this bottle at?
The garage was kind of his workspace, and he had a bucket of cleaning rags for his car, because he cleaned the car. He had a lot of different rags and different variety of stuff for the car. So it was in a bottle, it was in a bucket with rags for the cleaning.
And we've heard that cleaning cars is kind of Jose's thing.
Yeah, if the cars were messy, yeah, we were in trouble.
Did you ever have a time to witness Jose have weird or, strange reactions to any of his medications?
Yeah. So the following month, April 15th, I think it was, or April 15th, so on April 16th, he got up, he was going to go volunteer at the VA that day, and he got up and he was ready to go to work, and he had a shirt on and his shoes, but no pants on. And he was getting ready to go get in the car. And I was like, Jose, what are you doing? And he stumbled, he went into the bathroom, he stumbled, he fell back, he broke the picture in the wall, and I didn't know what was going on. I was like, what's wrong with you? And I did call his sponsor that day, and I said, Fred, something's wrong with Jose. He's trying to get in the car, he doesn't have any pants on. I passed him the phone. Fred starts talking to him, telling him, you can't go to work like that, you have to stay home. He proceeded to put his pants on, get in the car, and go to the VA.
And what happened from that point?
He came back about 20 minutes later, kind of stumbling back into the house, saying, I changed my mind, I decided not to go to work. And then a police car pulled up about 5 minutes after that and said, Mr. Perez just left the scene of an accident, and they gave him a ticket.
Besides seeing the bottles, did you have any other indications that Jose was drinking alcohol, or in his behavior, any other indications?
I smelled alcohol on his breath quite a few times after that, and he said it was the Listerine.
Do people that are in Alcoholics Anonymous, are they able, how would he get help at that point in time with that many years sober? Like, where would he go? What would he need?
You just have to raise your hand at a meeting and say, I drank. I'm ratting myself out. I drank. I relapsed. I need to start counting days again. That's what everybody does.
Why didn't you rat him out?
It's not my responsibility to rat somebody else out. We have to do that for ourselves.
Have you known people, is relapse considered a part of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah, relapse is it's a threat to everybody. Every single one of us could relapse. So.
But you wouldn't expect that someone with that long a period of sobriety to relapse, correct?
Honestly, I've seen people relapse with 5 years, 50 years. Relapse can happen at any time. The minute we let our guard down, and especially if we're doing stuff in our life that goes against the program, we're more at risk for a relapse. Yeah, if we're not talking, if we're not telling our sponsor what's going on and things like that, we're definitely more at risk for a relapse.
And when you say the program, is that the 12 steps?
The 12 steps, yeah.
Did you ever have any indication that, let me back up for a minute. When did you know for sure that you were going to be asking to leave Jose?
By about January, right before the February incident happened. So that's when I had made the decision that I was going to ask him to leave, and I knew I was going to have to do something different this time because each time I had asked him, I ended up backing down every time. So I knew that I needed to get some support this time.
And why didn't you just ask him to leave? Why didn't you make it that easy?
Every time I asked him to leave, he threatened to hurt himself, so I ended up backing down, and I couldn't do it. I knew it was going to hurt him.
And even you have January, February, March, April, like why not do it any of those times?
January is when I really made the decision, and I started doing my paperwork for therapy. February is when he went in the hospital. March is when his son died. April is when he had this health thing. So there was something going on every month.
Is it something that you didn't want to add to at that point in time?
Yeah, no, I couldn't handle it. I was overwhelmed. Isabel had just been put in a self-contained class, and that devastated me because, it just devastated me because she's such a wonderful person, and she's so brilliant, and it killed me to see her in a class like that. Not that there's anything wrong with those classes, but it was a huge, it was a big deal.
Explain what you mean by that being a big deal. What does the self-contained class mean?
Self-contained classroom. She stays in the same classroom, and it's a behavior class. It's called BED, which is behavioral something. I can't remember the rest of it. But it's a behavioral class for kids who have behavior issues. And so it's other kids who have acting out in class, and they can't be in the regular classroom because they pose some kind of a risk. And so she stays in the same classroom all day. She maybe gets to go out for specials, but, before she was in the regular curriculum, she was in the regular setting. So everybody wants their kid to be in a regular, they want their kids to be regular.
Did you ever get any indication, I know you said you had smelled sex on Jose before, but you didn't do anything about that.
Nope.
Did you ever get anything that you considered concrete proof that Jose was cheating on you?
Yeah, in May, I got up one morning and he was still logged on to his Facebook, and I sat down at the computer and I saw this message in Spanish from some lady in Florida, and it was very, to me it was, I don't know, hearts and love and kisses and stuff, and I asked her, who are you and why are you writing to my husband? And I was angry, and I was going to fight and, fight with this woman and all that. And then I said to myself, I finally have some kind of concrete proof to be able to say, here, I know I'm not crazy. Here you go. Now I want my divorce. And since he had been an assistant DA, I titled it evidence, and I saved it so that I could present him with evidence that I knew he was cheating.
Your Honor, may I approach? And I've marked Defendant's Exhibit number 7. If I may approach.
Yes.
Ms. Madonna, if you can take a look at what's been marked as Defense Exhibit number 7. What is that piece of paperwork? I just handed to you.
This is the copy that I made of the Facebook between him and her.
And how were you able to get onto his Facebook?
He was already logged on when I got on there.
And why did you go through his messages?
It was on the page. Like when I sat down at the computer, the screen was on that already.
Okay. And what did you do to put it into another document?
I copied it and pasted it into a Word document.
And is that the document that you created from that?
Yes.
And does that fairly and accurately represent the document that you were talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to admit Defense Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection.
Motion allowed.
Ms. Madonna, is that message in Spanish or in English?
It's in Spanish.
And what does that message say in Spanish?
You want me to read it in Spanish?
Yes.
Or you want me to tell you in English what it means?
I want you to read it in Spanish first.
I can't read Spanish.
Oh, I'm sorry. But she can't take Spanish. All right, go in English then.
It says, "My love, I hope you have an excellent night and think about me. I love you with all my heart. Take care of yourself and dream about me. Kisses." And then half an hour later or 20 minutes later, she says, "I love you." And then the next thing on there is 7 hours later where I say, this is Jose's wife. Who are you and why are you sending this to my husband?
And I think I'd ask the officer that submitted that, you know how to speak Spanish?
I've been a Spanish teacher for 13 years.
And just for the record, can you read it in Spanish as well? So I don't want anybody to think that you're...
Is that okay?
I'm not gonna take it down.
She won't take it down.
She won't take it down, but we'll just
Okay.
do it.
You're putting me on the spot. It says, mi amor, que pases una excelente noche y que pienses en mí. Te amo con todo mi corazón. Cuídate y que sueñes conmigo. Besos. And then te amo.
Oh, thank you. And what does besos mean?
Kisses.
And what does corazon mean?
Heart.
And what does te amo mean?
I love you.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
I don't have that. I don't, it
If you-
doesn't take those words.
If you can pass that down, if you need it, you can take
You
it
mean-
from there. But we're fine. We're moving on. So what did you do with that message from that point?
I printed a copy of it and I showed it to him and I said, I want my divorce. And he said, I don't know who this woman is. And so he right away went right into the denying and this is you, this has nothing to do with me. So he went right into, he wasn't owning it at all. He wasn't going to admit it at all.
And you said you sent a message to that person. Do you know who that person is?
I don't know who this lady is. I just saw that she was in Florida and that's where he had lived for a long time. So it made sense to me that she would be somebody that he would have connected with. Plus he had been to the Puerto Rico, the convention, so.
And why didn't you just ask him to leave right then?
I did.
And what did he do?
He said that this wasn't real. He said, I don't know that person. And so we didn't have any further discussion about that. Because I knew if he was already lying about, if he was denying it and he had it right there in his hand, I went back and spoke to my therapist for a little more, what do I do now? Now what do I do?
And Ms. Madonna, there's been some talk about you having access to Jose's Facebook account. Did you go in and create a profile of Martha Hernandez and send that message to Jose?
No, I did not.
And did you manufacture that email that you marked as evidence when you're talking to Jose in any kind of way?
No, I did not.
You just copied and pasted it and put it into a Word document?
Yes.
So at this point, you're sure that you're going to leave Jose?
I'm positive I'm going to leave Jose.
Are you guys still living in the same house and sleeping under the same roof and everything?
Yes.
And when he said he wasn't going to leave or it wasn't real, did you just leave it alone?
I left it alone.
How did finding this piece of evidence change you in regards to your relationship with Jose?
I had just started detaching and I started trying to mentally get myself ready. I'm going to be a single mom again. I'm going to be a single mom again. I'm going to be a single mom again. And that was huge. There was a lot of, I hadn't been single for 10 years at that point. I hadn't been alone for 10 years. So that was going to be a major change for me. And so I had to really psych myself up to be able to say, I'm going to be single again. I'm going to be a single mom. There's nobody, it's just, I had to start thinking about financial stuff and making sure I knew what I was going to be able to do and not do.
Okay. And were you talking to other people that you were going to be single again?
Yeah, I had started, because up until that point, nobody really knew, like one of my friends knew this much, the other friend knew that part, the other friend knew that part. The only person that knew all of it at that point was Mr. Richardson, who was my therapist at that point. So now I started telling people the whole thing, the whole picture.
And you segued right into it. We got to talk about Chad Richardson. How did you end up meeting up or connecting with Mr. Richardson?
We got a call from O'Dwyer's that they needed a band for the following weekend. And I called, basically I reached out to every bass player that I knew because if you have a show, you don't want to play with somebody that you've never played with before. So I reached out to every bass player I knew, and nobody could make it because it was the following week. And Mr. Richardson had mentioned that he had been a bass player, so I found him on Facebook, and I asked him if he would be available to play that show, and he said that'd be great.
Oh, let me back up a little bit. You had known Chad Richardson before then, correct?
Oh, yeah, he was my therapist.
Okay. How did you find him in that regard?
Oh,
to
sorry.
Go to therapy.
Yeah. So when I went to Carolina Partners for therapy, I guess he was in the rotation to be scheduled for the next patient or whatever. So that's how I ended up meeting Mr. Richardson.
And did you end up meeting with Mr. Richardson and him becoming your therapist for at least a little while?
Yeah, he was my therapist March, April, May, probably like almost 3.5 months. But I was sporadic with it.
And how many times do you remember meeting with Mr. Richardson?
I met with him 4 times, and by the last time I had told him that I think that I would just need to do Al-Anon as opposed to therapy.
And talk some about the things that you talked to Mr. Richardson about in a therapist relationship.
Yeah, he was the first male therapist I ever had because I'm not comfortable. Usually I would have asked for a female therapist, but I felt really at that point I really needed to start talking to somebody seriously about what was going on because I felt like I was sick. I felt really sick. And I forgot the question. Sorry.
Well, what did you talk to your therapist about?
I talked to my therapist about everything, and I made a promise to myself, lay out everything, everything. And because that's what really had gotten me in trouble was not talking to anybody, not letting anybody know what was going on. I'll handle it myself, that was what I was doing. So I went in there and for 45 minutes I just put it all out there. And I started out talking about the grieving, about, finding out my daughter was autistic, because there was a real grieving process that happened for me with finding out my child was autistic. And then talking about grieving the marriage, because I knew that the marriage was not what I had hoped it was going to be 4 years ago when Jose and I had gotten married. And so that was, I believe, our first session was talking about all that.
And you saw him a couple other times before your therapist relationship ended?
I saw him 4 times altogether.
Okay. Do you remember the date of the last time that you saw him as a therapist?
I don't remember the date. I know it was after a friend of mine had passed away, and I remember that had a really huge impact on myself and my family.
And obviously we've seen a bunch of text messages between you and Mr. Richardson. How did that relationship start out? How did it turn from a therapist relationship into a flirting relationship?
It was actually the day that we were going to play with the band. I was texting the guys, what time are you getting there? What time are we going to unload? And that's kind of what you have to do. You have to stay in touch with each other and figure out who's getting there first and all that. And he asked me something about how's it going, and I said, I'm getting ready, I'm going to file my separation, and he was telling me how he's on these dating sites on the computer, and that I could do that when I was single, and I said, I'm too messed up at this point, I can't even think about that, and he said, well, when you're ready, I want first dibs. And I was shocked. I was thinking, I said to him, you don't want me. I said, I am so messed up. You do not want me. I'm pretty messed up. And he said, you are no more messed up than anybody else. I want first dibs. And it started going back and forth. And as you know, it evolved over the next 7 days.
And you're saying that those text messages, because they took your phone for this investigation and took his phone for this investigation. These text messages and how many times did you see him over that week or so?
The first time I saw him, I had to go give him his check, his cut of the band. So I met him somewhere. He was working in Wake Forest. So we met at the Starbucks, and I gave him his check, and we sat in the car and talked a little bit. And he started telling me a little more personal information about himself. And a a couple of the things he told me sent up a red flag for me, because it didn't coincide with what he had actually said before. So, but that was the first time I saw him. I think we had 2 other times we met for, on his lunch break. I went to his house one time, and then this incident happened, and I went the following night.
And any of the flirtatious text or communication with Mr. Richardson, were those all after you found the Facebook messages that you marked as evidence?
This says that the conversation was in May. So this happened in May, and I didn't start texting with Chad until the week before this incident. So that was about a month later.
And you know that we've all seen your text messages. We've talked about them multiple times for multiple hours at this point. You know those text messages were wrong.
Yes, absolutely, they were wrong.
And you were hanging out with Chad, and during lunch, what were you guys doing?
We were talking. There was no physical contact except for one occasion where we kissed at his house. But when we saw each other on his lunch hour, he was in his lunch suit, and we just talked.
And did you guys ever progress past talking? Or excuse me, past that kiss?
No, there was no other physical, nothing.
Did you have sex with
We did
Mr.
not
Richardson?
have sex, no.
And at the end of May, is that when you found out about your nephew, William?
Oh, yeah. We had been following that. William was supposed to be getting better. And May is when his dad told me that they called in hospice. And once I heard the word hospice, I knew, I knew it was bad. And he was young. He was 16 years old.
And at that point, you felt that your nephew was going to pass away.
Yeah, he was going to pass away.
And did you message his mom asking to come down there and see him?
Yes,
And how did you do that?
on Facebook.
And did you guys have a conversation back and forth about that?
Yes,
trip?
I don't remember exactly what the conversation says, but we talked about me coming down and when I was going to be able to come down and when they weren't going to be working.
And Your Honor, if I may approach, I've marked Defense Exhibit number 8. If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
Ms. Madonna, I'm handing you Defense Exhibit number 8. What is that?
This is the conversation between Michelle Lopez Parrish and myself, dated May 27th.
And you recognize that as a conversation that you had with her?
Yes,
And does that fairly and accurately represent that conversation that you had?
it does.
Your Honor, I ask that Defense Exhibit number 8 into evidence.
No objection.
Motion in addition to evidence allowed.
And Ms. Madonna, if you could make sure you reflect the dates as well, but what is that conversation going back and forth?
You want me to read it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I say on May 27th at 12:33, I say, hi, tomorrow I can come for the day. Is that okay? And this is to Michelle Parrish. Michelle says, geez, we're both working. I'm sorry. That was May 27th also. I respond, what about Wednesday? P.S. Is the cancer in his bones? Michelle says, yes. Okay, this is it.
It's a
Okay,
duplicate.
all right. And then I ask her, do you have a number I can text you? Do you want me to keep going?
Yes, ma'am.
May 28th, I say, Hey, I think I have a contact at the Duke Pediatric Cancer Center. If I get it, I will pass it right on to you. There was recently a story on the news about a young girl here who had the same thing as William. She is being treated at Duke, and she's doing really well, I think. So one of the reporters from the news is putting us in contact with these people at Duke. That was May 28th. And I didn't get a response from Michelle in that conversation. You want me to keep going?
Yes, ma'am.
June 12th, 6:46, it says, this is me to Michelle. Hi, checking on you guys. I would like to drive down for the day, Saturday. Michelle answers me back and says, okay, that should be fine. Would love to see you. I say, now on June 13th, I say, good morning. I'm leaving here by 7 Saturday morning. I will go to Billy's first. How far are you from there? Can I bring anything for any of you? Michelle says, that sounds great. Can't wait to see you. Can't really think of anything for you to bring. And the 14th, I say, so what should I expect tomorrow? Is he stable or is he deteriorating? I love you. And the next one, she responds on the 14th and says, very stable, some days better than other, laughing this morning because normally he'll sleep in. But first thing today, he made a beeline to the fridge, LOL. And June 14th, I say, okay, see you tomorrow.
So your first communication of trying to go down there and see your nephew was on May the 27th?
Right,
And the family wasn't available to meet with you on that date?
right.
And did you end up going down to see your nephew a couple of weeks later?
Yes, I went on June 15th.
What time did you leave from your home to go down to?
I left sometime between 8 and 9 Saturday morning.
And which car did you take?
I took Jose's car. Rachel she had hit a deer the night before, so she was going to use my car, so I took Jose's car. I asked permission, and he said yes, it was fine.
Did you talk to Jose about where you were going and what you were doing?
Yeah, Jose was very angry with me for going down to South Carolina without him. So I was already in trouble, and yeah.
Why were you in trouble?
I was in trouble because I was going down without him. And that was one of the things that, I mean, if I was, usually when I went anywhere, it was expected that we were going to go together. And the fact that I went down there by myself was like disobeying.
And why didn't you take him with you then?
This was about my nephew. Well, that's part of it, is that this was John's family. This wasn't nothing to do with Jose. He had only met them that once. But I also, at this point, I was ready for the divorce. I was ready to have to start learning how to do things by myself like this and stop worrying about disappointing him and how he was going to react.
And on that day, did you know that you were going to come home and ask Jose to leave?
Yes, I had decided that I was going to do that before the end of the weekend, and that was my decision.
And why before the end of that weekend?
Because I wanted to be able to celebrate Sunday with my father.
Was the next day Father's Day?
The next day was Father's Day.
So was it sticking important in your head that you wanted to be separated from Jose before Father's
Yeah,
Day?
I mean, just so many of those lies, and Jose had kind of gotten my father really involved with all of our issues, and he would go in there and talk to my dad every time we had an argument, and then my father would get upset, and then my father would come in and he'd be upset, and I just wanted it was done. I was ready for my divorce.
And we talked probably too little about your father during this thing, but your father and Jose got along too, correct?
Yeah, they got along really well. They talked about being veterans. They talked about flying. Dad was really impressed with Jose, being an assistant DA, and Jose used to talk about that. Dad used to like the stories from the courtroom, and he used to like his helicopter stories. He had told my dad that he had gotten shot down at one point. And then he told him another story about when they went down and rescued this one platoon that was under fire. And so my father really loved Jose.
And your father appreciated having another man in the house too, I'm assuming.
Yes, they were outnumbered.
So when you went down to Spartanburg, where did you go first?
I went to Billy's first.
Okay. And what did you do at Billy's house?
Billy and I sat down and started talking about his son, and he was talking to me about, William's got his new guns and he's got his new swords and stuff. And at that point, I was telling him that I had been considering getting a gun for a little while, especially, well, I'm not sure that I mentioned that I was getting separated at that point, but I was thinking about that for the girls, making sure that I could protect my kids and stuff. And I knew that he had experience with guns, and I asked him, well, what's a good kind of gun for a woman to own who's never touched a gun? And so we had started having that conversation.
And speaking of your girls, had you told Rachel and Michelle that you were going to be planning to separate from Jose that day?
Yeah, I had told everybody that I was planning on separating from Jose that day. I told my sponsor, I told my friends in New York, I told my cousins in New York, I told everybody.
And then you went to a pawn shop first, correct?
Yeah, Billy brought me to some pawn shop that was near, I don't know, between him and his wife's house. And we looked around. He pointed out a couple of small guns, and they were in what I thought I'd be able to spend. But he said they weren't good enough to, whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't know guns, so I don't know what he said was wrong with them. But and then he pointed out this gun that his son wanted. It was like $1,000 gun, and I said I was going to come down a couple of weeks and take him shopping.
And then you went to William's house, correct?
Yep, went to William's house.
And did Michelle meet you guys outside before you went inside the
Yeah,
house?
Michelle met me at the door. She came out to see me before we went in. And I had this speech already because I was thinking about it on the 4 hours down. I'm going to have to say goodbye to my nephew, and I've got this whole spiritual speech planned, and talking about his uncle, my husband, who was going to be up there in heaven with him. And she said to me, "You can't talk about the cancer." And I said, "Well, how I want to say goodbye to him." And she said, "No, we're not saying goodbye." She said, "Just don't mention the cancer." And I said, "Well, what am I supposed to talk about?" And she said, let him talk about his weapons. He loves his weapons. Let him talk about his weapons. So then we went in the house.
Okay. And when you went in the house, did you start talking about his weapons?
I saw William for the first time. I hadn't seen him since the cancer had come back, and I was devastated to see him in that condition. He had his little hat on, and he just looked he didn't look anything like the boy that he had been the last time I'd been down there. And yep, sure enough, he starts talking about his weapons, and he says, "Aunt Joe, let me show you these." And he spread out this whole spread of all his things out on the floor.
And we've seen a picture. Is that you, Billy, and William sitting on the couch?
Yeah, that's me, Billy, and William sitting on the couch.
Is that the first time you ever held a gun?
Yeah, I never held a gun in my life.
In that picture that we saw?
Yes.
And are you, is the conversation talking about, do you ever start talking about your safety or leaving your husband?
Yeah, I start talking, because the only thing I can contribute to this conversation is I've been thinking about getting a gun myself at some point. And that's when William says, "I have one that you can borrow."
And what did you think when he said, "I have a gun you can borrow"?
I said, "No, I don't. I'm not going to take your gun."
And then what happened?
He said, I want my cousin safe. I want you to have this gun." He said, when you come back in a couple of weeks, he said, "you can buy something else." He said, "but I want you to have this. Make sure you guys are okay."
And do you know if he loaded it right there?
I believe that he loaded it, yes.
And I guess he talked to you about, general gun stuff.
Yes, he did.
And then when, did he give you anything else?
He gave me a knife also. He said, "You can't carry the gun unless you have a permit." He said, "So here's the knife."
And I think Billy and Michelle said that you were anxious or excited. What were you anxious or excited about while you were down there?
Well, first of all, I was in saying goodbye to my nephew, so that was very, I was stressed about that, seeing him like that. And, but what was mostly on my mind was that I knew I was already in trouble with Jose for being gone for so long. And I'm trying to still retain in my brain what I'm going to say to him when I get home. I want a divorce. I need you to leave. I want a divorce. I need you to leave.
That was all that was playing in your head?
Yeah, over and over again, like obsessive thinking, just like running a loop over and over again in my head.
And then you leave and head back to your home?
Yes, I left and then I headed back up to North Carolina.
When you got, did you talk to Rachel or Michelle about, did you give them any instructions about you coming home and this conversation that was
Yeah,
gonna
I
happen
told
with
them I told them both that I was asking Jose to leave, and I asked them to make sure they weren't in the house in case it got loud. And Rachel said she wasn't leaving.
Why wasn't Rachel going to leave?
Rachel, I don't know, had no place to go. I don't know. I'm not sure why she didn't leave, but she said she was going to be home.
Okay. So because of that, did you decide that you were going to tell Jose still, but take a trip with
Yeah,
him?
I wasn't changing my mind. I was asking for a divorce. This was it. I got myself ready. This is it. Tonight I'm asking him to leave and that's it. And so I decided we could just take a drive and I would tell him on the way and drop him off at Fred's house.
And that was your plan?
That was my plan. I'm going to drop him off at Fred's house. Fred's going to get him into rehab.
At that point, when you got home, what did you do?
Jose was in the garage when I got home, and I got out of the car, and I said I was going to clean the, I had, trash from having stopped a couple of times on the way, and he said, I'll get the garbage. So I said, let me go just freshen up and stuff, and then we'll go for a ride. So I went into my room, and I had to charge my phone because the charger in the car wasn't working, so my battery was dead by the time I got home. So I went inside and charged my phone and prayed and asked for some guidance.
Did you take anything out of the car at that time that you're aware of?
No.
And
That's fine for right now. This might be a good stopping point.
Thank
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our afternoon recess. At this point during this time, it is your duty not to talk among yourselves about this case. It's your duty not to talk to the parties, the witnesses, or the lawyers about anything at all. It's your further duty not to talk to anyone else, to allow anyone else to talk with you, to say anything in your presence about this case, to do any individual research or investigation on your own about any issue touching on this trial, and do not form or express any opinion about this case during this time. With that, while everyone else quorum remains seated, I'll excuse the 13 of you and ask that you return to assemble in the jury room at 5 minutes to the hour 4. Again, we go by that clock. If that's your excuse.